Hi, Longheads. We know you're listening. This is Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons and monsters and serpents, to Brothers of the Serpent podcast, episode 67, coming from our emergency backup podcasting day, Thursday, for this week. We got a lot of interesting stuff to talk about, some new Snake Bros glossary terms to go through. Kyle is going to tell us the epic tale of the Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest story ever known, ever written so far that we've ever found. And I'm going to be interrupting him the entire time. It's going to be awesome. And as usual, we are joined by our good friend and Longhead, deep in his bunker beneath his secret space station in our space. How you doing out there, buddy? What's going on? Mr. Brett England.
Doing great. Thank you to all of the Snake Bros listeners for being patient this week and putting up with Thursday, Friday, because it's totally my fault that we didn't do it on Tuesday. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, I had a question for you.
I'm so mad.
I was looking into Randall Carlson again this week, and he's talking about the geologist that he follows that went through all the that basically detailed the massive meltwater floods of the north, like coming off the end of the Ice Age. And right. I was like, I just had this realization that this is evidence of how long you as a longhead have been on the side of alternative history, because his name is J. Harlan Bretz, which means he was a slave that belonged to you, right? He's like a human slave that belonged to you as a watcher.
It's hard for me to keep track. There were a lot of slaves. I'm sorry.
J. Harlan Bretz. He belongs to Brett. All right, enough with the stupid questions. Let's go. Okay, so first of all, as usual, we have space weather news. Thanks for that, Kyle.
Space weather news.
Earth's magnetosphere is leaking this week. Geomagnetic activity has been low. There are no big holes in the sun's atmosphere, nor any streams of high-speed solar wind lashing Earth's magnetic field. Nevertheless, Arctic skywatchers have witnessed some beautiful auroras. Why? Earth's magnetosphere is leaking. At this time of year, equinox cracks allow solar wind to penetrate our magnetic defenses, sparking northern lights without geomagnetic storms. Equinox cracks. I have to look into that. There's
cracks in the magnetosphere due to the equinox?
I don't know. The words in this article are blue, which means it's probably a link that I haven't clicked yet.
Yeah.
I don't know what those are, but I'll find out. So that's it for the...
All right, I'm going to manswer it.
You're going to manswer it?
Yeah.
Mansplain this.
Never mind. I was thinking of...
Well, I know the equinox was last weekend. So does that mean that when we're facing the sun in this particular way, the magnetic field is all lined up? So
that's what I was thinking is the poles are the most perpendicular to the sun that they're going to be. So
it's not cracks. That's just a weave of the magnetic field, right? And it lines up with the sun's because of the way it's perpendicular.
Yeah.
And so the solar flux is coming out, and it's got its own magnetic flux or whatever, and when it's lined up like that with Earth's magnetic field, it can get through it.
Yeah.
I know that this also has to do with the...
That's a good manser.
I can totally manser things. I have no answers, but I can manser anything.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I was going. All right. But I was actually going to use cracks, because the poles are perpendicular to this massive magnetic field bombarding it. It's like cracking the normal order of the field.
Okay.
Right, and opening up these holes that actually come from the poles.
All right.
Down further towards into the southern or northern.
That's also a good manser.
Hemisphere.
Either one. That's the great thing about mansers is they can all be right.
That's right. They are always right.
They're all right. The one I gave was right, and the one he gave was also right.
frequently answered questions. Check out that section on our blog.
FMQ, frequently answered questions. All right. So do you have any news stories? You got anything?
Yeah. 3,005-year-old hand is Europe's earliest metal body part.
What?
I know. Misleading headline there.
Like a prosthetic?
Yes.
Wow.
Found in a Bronze Age grave, the rare artifact may have been used for ritual purposes. Well, let's not talk about what those might have been.
Yeah.
Swiss archaeologists recently announced the discovery of what they say is the earliest metal representation of a human body part ever found in Europe. The 3,500-year-old object is a hand, slightly smaller than life-sized, made of more than a pound of bronze. It has a cuff of gold foil glued to the wrist and a socket inside that would have allowed it to be mounted on a stick or a pole.
Or a stump.
Yeah. The find was originally uncovered in 2017 near Lake Biel in the western Canton province of Bern by treasure hunters using metal detectors who turned it in to authorities along with a bronze dagger and rib bone they found nearby.
Wow.
That's pretty awesome. Man, just grab that metal detector.
Wow. Wait. Like, could this be connected with the silver hand?
Yeah.
Except it's his brother, the bronze hand.
It's green now.
Right.
He was constantly like, "What's wrong with your hand, man? It's kind of green." Ah, dang it. Just
Yeah.
polishing my hand.
You had the famous Lou Silverhand, king of all Britain, and then you had his brother Bob, bronze hand.
That's right. So yeah, they figured the age by radiocarbon dating a tiny bit of the organic glue that was used to attach a layer of gold foil to the sculptor's wrist.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I love this whole thing with European, quote unquote, treasure hunters that then turn over all the treasures to the authorities as soon as they find them. Like, I'm like, those guys aren't, I don't know if treasure hunter is really the right term. Maybe it is. I don't know. It seems to me like
I'm a treasure hunter looking for artifacts all the time. And I got another one. A new 26,000-pound dinosaur was discovered.
Oh, wow.
The headline says it was Earth's largest land animal.
Okay.
So
during its time period or something?
It doesn't say. That's what the headline says. But then I started reading and it was like, if humans had lived 200 million years ago, they would have marveled at the largest dinosaur of its time.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
Its name means a giant thunderclap at dawn. The recently discovered fossil of a new dinosaur species in South Africa revealed a relative of the Brontosaurus that weighed 26,000 pounds, about double the size of a large African elephant.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got there and I was like, wait a minute.
Wait a
This
minute.
is not the largest
Yeah, no.
land animal.
I mean, like the Apatosaur is bigger than that.
Yeah. So anyway, then I lost interest in it. But the name...
Click. Damn it.
Yeah, I know. Freaking clickbait. The name is Ledumahati.
Ah, okay.
And it's Sesotho, which is a South African
yeah.
language indigenous to the part of the country where
That's
the
cool.
dinosaur was found. Yeah.
Giant thunderclap at dawn.
Giant thunderclap at
I'm
dawn.
gonna have to remember that. Next time I get up early and there's like a thunderstorm, it's all I'm gonna be like, Ludo Mahati!
Yeah.
I'll never remember it, but that would be cool. If I could just shout that out.
Yeah. So that's all I got. That's all I got. Two ancient things found.
Two ancient things found. Cool.
One of them was 2,600 years old, and the other one was 26,000 pounds. Or 3,500 years old, whatever.
All right, so we have some new Snake Bros glossary terms, which I have posted on the website at brothersoftheserpent.com under the glossary. First one is awesome fossil face. If a global catastrophe is about to bury you and turn you into a fossil, just try to look kick-ass.
That's right.
And I have a picture of like the most awesome anglerfish fossil ever found, and he's got this like he looks hardcore.
Yeah. Strike a pose and make sure you have an awesome fossil face.
That's right.
When that tidal wave is coming.
That's right. Because they're going to find you eventually, and you need to have an awesome face.
That's right.
If you can't, if you don't have enough time because the catastrophe is coming so fast, you don't have enough time to make yourself into an oopart. Just make an awesome fossil face.
Don't be one of the many who left the fleeing footprints in the sedimentary rock.
Right.
No. You turn around and you face that cataclysm and make sure it's an awesome fossil face.
Yeah.
You want to be the one that's like on the biggest display ever in the museum.
Right. Right. Don't be the guy that left the footprints. Be the face on the slab of rock.
And don't be like looking back in fear. No, be standing athwart history and saying, "Look at me."
Look upon me, ye mighty, and weep.
And despair.
And despair. All right. Next term, post-posthumous. I'm sure you guys have heard us say this many times, like ever since Kyle said it the first time. And now it's like we can't not say it. Anytime I think of the word posthumous, I say post-posthumously. I can't not say it now. So post-posthumous, after you die, and then after that.
That's right. If you're mummified, your mummy is post-posthumous.
That's right. They find your awesome fossil face. They found it post-posthumously because it was after you died, and then after that. All right. Next,
okay. That's actually, you can make that term accurate in terms of a fossil. Yeah, it was fossilized post-posthumously.
That's right. That's right. The fossilization process takes place post-posthumously. All right. Next term, bowling pin hats. Ancient Egyptian crowns that look like a bowling pin in a champagne bucket.
Yeah.
And you just have to go look at the picture on this one because everyone I've showed this to has laughed their asses off because it is exactly what it looks like. These guys are standing there and they have this giant crown on that looks like a bucket with a bowling pin stuck in it.
Yeah.
And on this particular frieze, there's actually another dude who has 3 bowling pins on his hat.
That's right.
So the Egyptians were big into bowling.
He had a spare.
Yeah, he needed to pick up the spare.
Yep. Once we get the Snake Bros store open, you will be able to purchase your very own bowling pin hat.
That's right. And we'll make cloaks that look like shoulder rivers. Yeah. All right, next term, cephas. This one is kind of like nephas. It's a shorting of the cephalopods. And one look at them and it's clear that they want to kill us all. Because you look at that picture and you can tell that he's a blob of jelly that's very angry.
A tentacle monster that's very angry at you.
That's right. He hates you.
Yeah. And so the theory goes is that the cephas are basically the nephas of the sea.
Right.
You know, they rule the ocean. They're devious, intelligent, angry.
Yeah.
Beings that live down there, and they kill sharks when they're bored.
Yeah.
And
they fight whales.
Yeah.
People are like, well, sperm whales always win, but I'm just like, well, we don't see the sperm whales that lose.
Yeah. And they have writing and light.
Yeah.
And camouflage.
Yeah.
They have all kinds of technology.
And they hate us. And
they use ink.
For thousands of years, we've had legends of giant ones that no one has believed until very recently, when evidence of giant cephas have come out. And now we have like the giant beak that was found in Australia that was the enormous kraken, which is the mother of all cephas. So, and he was making cepha selfies out of plesiosaur skeletons. So like these guys were intelligent 200 million years ago, 2 miles beneath the ocean that used to be on top of Australia. Cephas. They hate us. Okay. Last term. Shoulder rivers. I already mentioned this one.
Jelly snakes.
Ocean snakes. Shoulder rivers. When you have rivers flowing out of your shoulders because you're an ancient god. That was the only explanation I could come up with. I don't know what to explain, but if you look at the very old cylinder seals, Sumerian cylinder seals of Enki, He has rivers coming out of his shoulders that have like fish swimming up
upstream.
them.
Yeah, the salmon
towards his shoulders.
shoulder rivers.
So I have a picture of like one of the cylinder seals that has Inky on it, and he's got definite shoulder rivers, and he's holding like a hawk or something, and there's like a weird beetle goddess floating in the sky, and just it looks incredibly alien. It's very strange.
So eventually,
Dr. Seuss trees in the background.
eventually on the Snake Bros store, you will be able to buy your very own Halloween costume that everybody will be like, what the hell are you?
The F. Yeah.
I'm a snake bro.
Yeah.
I have a butt flap, I have shoulder rivers, and a bowling pin hat.
Right. Or a long head with horns around it.
Yeah. Walk around that on the Day of the Dead, and all of the dead will run from you.
That's right.
And bow down before you.
Man, those are great ideas. Bowling pin hats on Snake Bros store.
Yeah.
Shoulder river cloaks.
Yeah.
So I did want to make one correction. This was not the last show or the one before that, but I was talking about the legend of the monkey god and the whole Chinese story where he goes up into heaven and talks to the dragon. The dragon teaches him the 72 forms of transformation and then calls him the finder of secrets. I called that monkey god Hanuman. Now, that is the name of the monkey god, but that is the Indian or Hindu name, not the Chinese one. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Hanuman is not the Chinese. I don't know what I can't remember what the Chinese word for it is, but Hanuman is the Hindu name for that same being. And going on that, there's this interesting thing I was looking into. The whole, people call it the bridge of Adam, or Adam's bridge. It goes between like the Indian mainland and Sri Lanka.
Oh yeah. Under the ocean.
Yeah,
like
it's under the ocean now.
Right.
Yeah, but they found on either side, like so the whole legend of that, the ancient myth says that, I can't remember which god it was particularly, but it doesn't matter. They basically. Oh, okay. So the Watcher says Sun Wukong is the Monkey King from the Chinese story. Sun Wukong. Cool.
Right.
Thanks, Watcher. So the Adam's Bridge, there's a story that this deity like basically built this bridge to Sri Lanka to get over there, and then they got over there and found like this race of crazy giants basically and had to fight them. And the people, they said that they got 1 million monkeys to build the bridge. So that just reminded me of that, because the whole Hindu monkey god story. So you have these ancient gods, and it's kind of Sitchin-esque.
Yeah.
You know, they get these monkeys to build them the bridge to get across.
Yeah, the workers. Yeah.
And it's interesting because you can still see the bridge if you go on Google Earth or look at NASA photographs of it. You can see it. It's been pushed by tidal action, so it's got a bow in it now. But it's basically like they just laid enormous blocks all the way across.
Like made a road.
Yeah, like a road that used to be above water. And it's definitely like at least the ends that they've checked on the where they come up onto dry land. Those they have evidence of enormous megalithic blocks, sockets, and that it's constructed.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, monkey bridge.
Yeah, the Adam's Bridge built by monkeys, the Adamu.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been looking into a bunch of interesting things, and this is going to lead up to Kyle's telling of the Gilgamesh story. But I wanted to bring up, there's a few just disparate things that are very interesting to me. So one thing that I found out very recently is that, okay, so we all know that the obelisks from Egypt, they have these hieroglyphs going up their sides, right? So the obelisk, and you look at it, and it's got these hieroglyphs engraved into it, and the obelisk is made out of this like rose or pink granite from Aswan.
Yeah.
Very hard. Well, I didn't know, and I just found out recently in doing this more recent research, is that that studies have shown, and this is recent stuff, studies have shown that the surfacing of the obelisk itself is far superior to the etching work of the hieroglyphs. Okay. This fits the idea that those hieroglyphs were much later added additions. You know, it was like this.
I wish I would have known that when I was in Italy, because like I was looking at all the monoliths. Why can't I think of what they are called? Obelisks. And, checking out the ones with the inscriptions and all that kind of stuff. And then when I was at the Vatican, there was this massive one.
St. Peter's Square.
Yeah, in St. Peter's Square. And I was like, I don't think that's a real one. It's totally blank.
Yeah.
And it's huge.
Yeah. It's real.
It's I found out it was real later, but when I say real, I mean that it was actually ancient Egypt, right? I just didn't think it was because it didn't have all the hieroglyphs all over it.
Right.
But I didn't know that they made them completely blank.
Yeah. Somebody
obviously
did initially,
Yeah. Obviously they did. I figured that out later, but when you're bringing this up now, I'm just like, dang it. I would have inspected the
and that one
quality
was
of the polishing.
if you could get to it.
That one was like you could get the closest to that.
Oh, okay, wow.
Because the other ones were way up on these massive fountains and huge constructions with all the Greek gods and everything Roman gods underneath that and all that. It's just
So what's interesting is that I don't want to diminish the quality of the hieroglyphs because even the hieroglyph etching, people have looked at it and they're deep and they come to these sharp points.
They're beautiful.
And no one has been able to figure out how exactly, even with Bronze Age tools, and these people were not supposed to be, if they were bronze, it was early Bronze Age, right? How they were etching this into this rose granite, because bronze is like a 3 on the Mohs hardness scale.
Yeah, it looks like it was done with a diamond router.
Right.
On a machine, controlled.
Yeah, a CNC machine. Yeah. So you have these, if you look at the hieroglyphs close, and you can find pictures of this online, they'll have these deep etched lines, or there would be a bird or whatever, and the ends of it, like the beak or the end of the tail or the ends of the hieroglyphs, come to these sharp points, but they could retain their depth all the way to this point.
Yeah, and the sun disk is actually
rounded, convex.
Yeah. It's beautiful the way it's rounded off, into the groove.
So that's what I'm saying. So think about the quality of the hieroglyphs. But microscopic or studies of the surfaces have shown that those are far inferior to the quality of the surface of the obelisk itself.
Yeah, well, that can make sense in that, say, planing the surface.
Yeah,
you can then go over it with finer and finer and finer materials to polish it. Right, and then when you go into etch inside, you're going to have these sharp angles, and they're going to be more rough.
Right.
In order to get in there and then work all those interior edges down from a rough cut to a finely polished surface is a lot harder. Yeah.
But even the corners, so on the if you're looking at the hieroglyph, the upper corner, anywhere it's digging in, right? So basically the part where the flat surface of the obelisk is cornered to dig in to make the hieroglyph mark, right? That corner, they're very clean or whatever, but looking at them with a magnifying glass or whatever, you can see not tool marks, but errors or imperfections. Okay, but when you look at the corners of the obelisk itself, which are far more exposed, they're pristine.
Yeah,
and it's so the whole thing, the angles, the flatness. Now what you're saying is it's a lot easier to do these flat planes than it is to make all these tiny little symbols. And I understand.
No. What I'm saying is to get finer and finer, or see higher levels of precision in how flat it is or how regular it is. You can do it on this big flat surface, right? But then when you go in and you're with the bit and you're say if they were using a machine cutting it out with the bit, all the flat surfaces inside those grooves and everything are hard to get to do your fine work. To work them down finer. Yeah. So it's if you look at any. I was looking at a stone sculpture at the museum in town, and if you look closely, in the it was a lion or some feline animal. Inside the claws where they had to dig deep in there, you can see that it is not nearly as well polished as, say, the toes on the outside.
Right, yeah, because it can't get in there to polish it.
Of course, the body is just beautiful, shiny, perfect. And then you look at inside the teeth and around these hard to reach areas, you can see rougher scratches where they were chiseling it out, but they couldn't get in there to polish it.
Yeah.
And to, work it down finally. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, so the other thing that I was looking at is that made me go look again at the boxes in the Serapeum, right? This massive complex just underneath the desert.
With the huge
giant black granite boxes. Yeah, where the lids weigh like 30 tons and the boxes themselves without the lids weigh 70 or whatever. And some of those have hieroglyphs etched on them. And when you look at those, like the surfaces of the boxes, now again, this is what you're talking about. Like it's easy to polish these flat, big surfaces of the box itself. But when you look at the hieroglyph etchings, it looks like somebody did it with a nail. Like they're very not good.
Yeah.
Like they're nowhere near approaching the quality of the ones that are on the obelisks.
Right.
But you can tell that whoever did it knew what they were doing in terms of writing hieroglyphs. Like they're still beautifully formed, but it was like the granite's so freaking hard. It really looks like somebody took a nail and scratched it in there and then did that over and over and over again until they got them deep enough to where you could read it. But that doesn't make any sense in terms of like making the box and then scratching these hieroglyphs into it. Like,
yeah, I know.
And like marring that face. It's like
there were cases like that in the Vatican Museum too. Like I was looking at like these beautiful black granite sculptures that are just like phenomenal in every way. And then at the bottom, they're scratched in these hieroglyphs, you know, and you're like,
I don't think so. Like the master makes the sculpture and then he lets his like little kid write on it or something like that.
Right. Or he has all these tools in his workshop that enable him to do all of this ridiculous badass like cutting and polishing of stone.
And then why didn't he make the hieroglyphs?
And the guy's hand and face and everything are just like awesome.
Yeah.
And then he just like sends it over to somebody else's shed where they have like a chisel and a rock, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you go ahead and put the name on it?
Yeah. Sign it for me.
Sign it with the king's name.
Yeah. No.
It's not happening. You're not touching my piece of art.
Right. And it was funny because like you see like the hieroglyphs are there and then you look on the front and then you see like MMXX2 like II.
Right. Yeah.
Like that's the Roman number. And then you look on the side and there's like white Sharpie.
Yes.
124364BA7. And you're like,
right.
Oh, that's what's happening here.
That's right. That's exactly what I've got pictures of it. That's exactly what it was.
Oh man. So another thing I was looking at is because this was leading me into looking at like are there any alternative theories on how some of these things were made, like whether it was by the dynastic Egyptians or not. And there are just random stonework lying around in Egypt. But most of these that I was looking at were on or near the Giza Plateau because this area, like really when you look at it, so if you go and look at some of these other places where the dynastic Egyptians did build these beautiful temples with these enormous pillars that have the lotus, whatever, they look like the flower on the top on the east, and then like there's some other kind of plant on the west side, and like just the beautiful stuff. That doesn't have the same megalithic blocks just lying around poking out of the sand, like the Giza Plateau does. So a lot of this stuff I was looking at were Giza Plateau things, and they're just sticking out of a dune, and like you can see these weird cuts into them and things like that show evidence of like, okay, so one of them, there was this planed surface and you could see these enormous curved lines in it. Okay, that shows you that somebody was using a circular saw of some kind. And basically, it's the same like if you were cutting through something, the saw leaves these curved lines, right? And each line is indicative of how much bite the saw takes into the material each revolution. Okay, at least that's what they're saying. I don't know this for sure, but like so, and and then because the cut wasn't completed, like part of it's broken, so like they're cutting into it, right? And then they stopped for whatever reason, and then part of it that was cut broke off. So now you can see the planed surface, and then the cut continues into the rock.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see not only the surface interior of the cut, but you can also see the width of the saw blade.
Right.
It's less than 1/8 of an inch.
Oh my God.
But the entire diameter of the blade, based on the curves, was 6 meters. And the travel through the material per revolution is over twice what we can do now with our like top of the line diamond blades.
Yeah. What material were they using?
And we can't make a blade that thin,
That's strong
that's
enough
that big, because it will start to wobble.
Right.
Right.
It'll bend itself up above where it's before.
Right.
Like the part of it that's still outside of the rock but headed towards the rock will like start to buckle.
Exactly. There's a thing called, for any cutting machine, there's a thing called a feed rate. And any cutting machine, no matter what it is, no matter how badass or how minuscule, has a maximum feed rate. And that's how fast you can push the material towards the blade, basically, or push the blade into the material. That's the feed rate. And like, we don't have a saw in modern times, so we don't have any materials that could do this, that could be less than 1/8 of an inch thick, that could be 6 meters in diameter, that could have a feed rate this fast. We can't do it. It's not even possible. Yeah. No materials that we have would do it. Anything we made with the blade would shatter, or it would it would try to throw the rock at you, and it would get caught, and everything would break. The whole machine would break down.
And it's like the drill cores that they have are the same.
Yes.
Like the you can see the revolutions on the drill cores, like it's got threads basically going down. And they're, in solid granite, and they're biting down like 1/16 of an inch every revolution or something ridiculous like that. And they're just like, how? The ones we use today are just...
The watcher is named Impossiblades. They used Impossiblades to cut Impossiblocks. All right, that's awesome. So we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back.
Impossisaws.
Impossisaws, using Impossiblades, cutting Impossiblocks. To build Impossimids. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back. And
maybe we're cutting the rocks with...
snakes!
Brothers of the Serpent podcast. Second segment. Just getting warmed up here. Just getting warmed up in the ice cold 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science. Let's talk about science.
All right.
Prove me wrong.
One other thing I did want to say is that this was cool. Ty Stone listened to episode 66, the last one about the crazy Nazi
no, he didn't.
Antarctica conspiracy stuff. He was like, "Oh yeah, buddy, whenever you talk about Nazis, you have my full attention." So that's kind of weird. But anyway,
he's a big World War II buff.
Yeah, sure. He loves the whole World War II thing. And he told me, and this was an interesting observation that he made. He just pointed out that the way that, in terms of the UN and policy, global policy, the way we treat Antarctica is very similar to space. Like, no weaponization, everybody cooperates. Like, we're not supposed to put missiles there or blow things up there or shoot at each other there. And that made me think, like, obviously what we need is Ice Force! Because, damn it, we need to go to space. As a Space Force, we need Ice Force, too.
That's right. Ice Force!
So I'm probably going to make a meme picture for that at some point. Ice Force! And have, like, a scene from, the second Star Wars where they're, like, the whole scene where they're fighting over the ice on the ice planet. Yeah, with the walkers and the Ice Force. And that's what we need to do in Antarctica. Need to go down there with AT-ATs and AT-STs and kick some ass. Hoth, that's right, the planet Hoth.
Yeah, James Lucas would love
that. That's right. Johnson Luxor would love that. All right, so speaking of telling an old story in a new way, let's hear a new story, an old story in an old way.
All right. The Epic of Gilgamesh.
Yeah.
So we decided we were going to look into ancient, actually try to learn the stories of some choice ancient myths so that we could kind of retell them on the podcast. And I don't know if you suggested Epic of Gilgamesh or not, but that's just what I chose. So,
Well, yeah, the Gilgamesh story was the first one that I thought of. I don't know if I suggested it or not, but that's definitely the first one I thought of because that's the oldest known. Yeah.
And the way it's like, I think scholars think of it is that it's the oldest fictional story.
Yeah.
Okay. Now there are elements of truth in it in terms of like there's cities and this and that. And
it's just like any fictional story.
Like uses, the cities and things of the times or whatever.
Right.
But basically this story cannot be true because sitchiniswrong.com. But so I was going through the story and, we talked about this before too, that like looking at the story with these eyes, but also trying to kind of wipe the slate clean in terms of what I know of the story and the analysis that I've been given in high school and, just all of that and just kind of look at it for what it is. And on the one hand, I can see how in terms of an epic, like it could have been used to pass on knowledge about things.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be true beginning to end, this or that. And it could be metaphorical in many ways.
Yeah.
In which would basically make it a myth, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't really matter. I think it's really awesome. And the more I've listened to it, the more I think there's still a whole lot of depth to it that I haven't even, really figured out or gotten into yet. But
yeah, I think like in the research I was doing for this show and looking at ancient myths, one of the best things I saw was this. It might have been Manly P. Hall, but he was saying that the most important thing to realize about mythology, or like if you're going to say indigenous or native whatever your peoples and getting them to tell you their oral traditions, he was like, they're telling you a story that is absolutely true, but is not literal.
yes.
And I was like, okay, that's a profound thing. Like,
I like that.
It's not necessarily a literally true story. Like I was like, Kyle went outside yesterday and blah, blah, and I'm telling you a true story about a real person doing a real thing or whatever. But that the story itself is true. It's just not literal. What the guy said was like, he's like, remember that they're telling you poetry.
Yeah.
And you can write a poem about something real, but it's going to be poetic.
Yes.
Okay. So it's
it's
a true story that is not literal.
Yeah. So I also looked into what the analysis of the story in terms of literature. And the professionals in literature claim that so many of the literary devices that are being used in this epic are quite profound.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they list out all these different devices that you can use for, like, narration and dialogue and just the timeline of the story and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
How you could define or describe a scenario, or you can just say a few things and not really tell you all of this other stuff, and just your audience will infer it.
Right.
Just on and on and on. It was that was a really rough part of researching this story, but. And honestly, I'm not really sure about the study of literature. Okay, now maybe there's something there, but like right off the bat, I'm like, dude, these guys are just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But their take is that not only is this the oldest known, quote unquote, fictional story, epic, whatever you would call it, but that these literary scholars are looking at all of the literary devices used in the story, and they're marveling at how brilliant it is.
Right.
In terms of the way it was narrated and all of this stuff. So it's like these, and I thought that was interesting that these modern people that are studying this story that's, 4,000 to 6,000 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
Are finding devices in it that they themselves have sort of come up with and named.
Yeah.
Based on just artists and whatever. And they're finding these artists from way back then are using them in the best way you can use them, picking the right ones and the most brilliant ones. And in that way, these scholars say it relates to us now, today.
Oh, okay.
And it moved people when it was found and interpreted, people all over the world were moved by this story and were just like, oh my God, this is
Right.
like
First
badass.
you're like, wow, this is cool because it's the most oldest story ever. And
Yeah.
then you read it and you're like, whoa, this
Yeah.
is really cool. Like that reminds me of the whole art thing. Like, was it Picasso, the guy that went in and looked at the ancient cave art that was found in Chauvet, France or whatever, and he came out of the cave and he was like, we have invented nothing.
Yeah. I don't know who it was.
As
but
artists,
I
yeah. It
remember
was like
that.
one of these, it was a famous, I don't know if it was Picasso, but he came out of the cave and he was like, we have invented, he was looking at 40,000-year-old cave art and
Yeah.
he came out and was like, we have invented nothing.
Yeah.
As artists, he meant that these ancient peoples were doing all of the techniques that he was aware of as a famous.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so on the one hand, I was kind of, just like blown away by the idea of literature and all these devices. And I'm just like, man, this is just mumbo jumbo. Like, are these people serious?
Yeah.
They're focusing on all this crap.
Yeah.
Are they just like crazy enthusiasts that are just making up terms for things? I don't know what
Yeah.
patterns that they recognize, but that at the end of the day, that they're looking at it and just looking at it in awe instead of saying, oh, well, they were just butt flap wearing people. You know how you get that attitude,
Oh, yeah. I got you.
right? It was the opposite of the least advanced butt flap. Like, they were like, this dude was brilliant, or female or whoever,
Right.
group of people, whoever it was.
So it was Picasso. He said,
Yeah.
I guess his direct quote was, in 15,000 years, we have invented nothing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, the story of the epic begins. Basically, Gilgamesh is the king in a city called Uruk, which is in Mesopotamia in Iraq.
Right.
And it even sounds like Iraq, but
Yeah.
U-R-U-K.
Yeah.
Uruk. Right.
Gilgamesh.
And he was made by the gods. He was 2/3 god, 1/3 man. And so he had a perfect body. He was just like huge and badass at everything. And he lorded it over the people, is the way it was interpreted.
When he was young.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was kind of a
He was just a,
hammerhead jock asshole.
yeah, he was just totally an asshole. Like, basically his father died and he was not around, and his mother doted over him because he was the split image of his father, and she just like,
okay, yeah.
So he just became this spoiled brat.
Right.
And there was a custom back in the day that if somebody was going to get married, then the king got the first rights to the bride, to the virgin.
Prima nocta.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he was doing that and like just being a total douche pretty
Yeah.
much. And the people of the city were just like all pissed off and, complaining about it. And
Yeah.
and the gods basically hear them, and so they go to the creator goddess and they're like, you created him, now create his equal, right? Because the people are upset and he's just like running amok down there.
Yeah.
So
Was this Ninhursag?
Ninurta or something.
Yeah, Ninurta.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not
probably the
going to
same
be
woman.
really good with the names.
Ninhursag.
Yeah. So she makes this other character, and it's not real clear on how he was made or what. He was just made and he lives in the forest and he runs around with the beasts of the forests and the animals and everything. He's just totally wild man. He's like, his body is covered in hair.
Yeah.
And he's huge and powerful and perfect body and everything. And basically she made Gilgamesh his equal. And at the same time, Gilgamesh has prophetic dreams. Like he's given this ability where he gets these dreams that tell the future. And so right when that happens, right when Enkidu is basically his companion or in the beginning, his equal that was created, when he was created, Gilgamesh has a dream that a meteorite fell from heaven
Yeah.
and landed on the earth, right? And all the people in the city gathered around to marvel at it, and it was like this massive chunk of metal,
God metal.
or rock or whatever. And they were all marveling at it, and Gilgamesh goes over there and he's like trying to pick it up, and he can't pick it up. It's too huge. He can't lift it. And so everybody helped him pick it up, and he took it to his mother, who is like sort of a priestess or something.
Okay.
And then she proclaims it his brother. And then he has another dream.
That was all in the dream?
Yes, that
Okay.
was all in the dream. Then he has another dream about an axe that's stuck in the town square in the ground. And like, yeah, it's massive and everything, right? But he sees it and it's just like so freaking awesome. And it's made of the stuff of Anu, which was the same as the meteor, made of the stuff of Anu.
Wow.
Right. Anu is the ultimate deity of the Sumerian
Sky god, yeah.
Sky god, yeah. So he gets the axe and he's just like, yeah, this axe is badass. And he keeps it at his side. And, anyway, he tells his dreams to his mother and she interprets them for him and basically says that, yeah, this is the strong comrade who's coming.
The meteor and the axe.
Yes, both are the same.
I just want to throw this in because this blew my mind. Like when you brought that whole thing up, I've talked about Titan Quest before, and I'll just say that the best weapon in Titan, and I just found this out by playing it recently, is called the Axe of Enkidu.
Oh, okay.
And it's when you look at it, because all the other weapons are metal and badass and crazy, but this one is like it's a stick with a stone, like this beautiful stone, like a flint. It's the Axe of Enkidu, and you get it. Like, you can just kill everything with that thing. It's badass. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that is Enkidu.
Yeah.
Okay. So, meanwhile, Enkidu is out in the forest. He's roaming around in the forest and eating he eats grass with the gazelles and just everything. He's just like totally a forest guy. He's basically...
He's a wild man, yeah.
He's a wild man. Totally covered in hair.
Sam Squanch.
Lives out in the forest, right? Huge. Sam Squanch. And there's a trapper out there, and he's going to... They would dig holes for the water to collect in them, and then they would set traps around them and catch the animals. And he sees Enkidu one day come down to the watering hole, and he just freaks out, right? It's just like every sighting, of Bigfoot that you can imagine. Like, he runs back to his dad and he's like, I just saw this huge guy. And he's running around with the animals and like he lets them out of my traps and he fills in my pits and all this stuff, he's preventing him from being able to catch his stuff. And his dad is like, you need to go to Uruk and find Gilgamesh and tell him about this guy. So he does.
Probably totally didn't believe him. He's like, sure, kid. Go tell the king about this. Thinking he'll never come back. This is terrible.
Well, his son had described like how big he was and he was strong
I know.
and all this kind of shit. So
he's
he's
being an asshole.
Yeah. So he goes. He does. He makes the trip to Uruk and he finds Gilgamesh and he tells him about the guy and Gilgamesh tells him, take this harlot with you. To the forest and have her strip naked at the watering hole.
Yeah.
And she'll seduce him. And then once he, basically has sex with her, then the beasts of the forest will reject him.
Ah, that's
so there's
very interesting.
there's some weird thing. And that aspect of the story is repeated twice. When the trapper tells his father first about Enkidu, he says, go to Uruk, tell Gilgamesh, and he'll send you with a harlot. And she will have sex with him, and then the beasts of the forest will reject him. It's just repeated verbatim.
Wow.
So when he goes to Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh tells him, and he gives him the harlot.
Here, have a harlot.
Yeah. And he takes her back with him, and he goes to the watering hole, and sure enough, Enkidu shows up there. And he's like, there, woman, go stand in the pond and take off your clothes. Let your breasts be bare. Let him see you. And then... teach him the woman's art, is what he says.
That sounds, that is, just like a modern politician. You go petition him for something and he just gives you a whore. It's like, nothing has changed. We have invented nothing.
Yeah, so it happens like, Enkidu sees her and like he basically goes and has sex with her for 6 days and 7 nights straight.
Holy crap.
Yeah. And then when he's done, like he's lost his strength, like he can't run, he's lost his swiftness and all this stuff has changed about him. And he tries to go back with the animals, but he can't catch them and they all run from him. And so the idea is that he is now wise. And that's what it says. Like,
so this is hints of the fall and the and the
wisdom.
The tree of knowledge of good and evil.
That's right. So now he has partaken of the fruit of the tree of knowledge.
Yeah.
And he is rejected by the rest of nature in a sense. He has been separated from that.
That's not fair. All those animals are boning.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, so then he hangs out with the harlot, and they stay together for a while, and she's trying to tell him, like, dude, she's like, now she sees he's transformed. She's like, you're like a god. You know, you are wise. But he still wants to go back in the forest, and she eventually convinces him, she starts telling him all about the city and what men have built, and what she tells him about Gilgamesh and all this stuff, and then she tells him Gilgamesh's dreams. She hears about him because Gilgamesh had told him, and then she tells him what Gilgamesh is doing in the city, that he's like lording it over the people, and he's just there is not a single virgin that goes untaken.
Yeah,
he takes all the young men. It's like he's just like putting everybody to work and war and fighting and just everything. It's like
so there's one part that I remember I wanted to ask you about this, like that I remember is that Gilgamesh would like challenge all these men, the young strong men, to wrestling,
every single one,
and would like beat them and like laugh at them and be an asshole.
That was the thing. He takes all the young men and just destroys them, like
physically destroys them, wrestles them, and
right, and then he screws all the young virgins, basically. Like he's just a total jerk.
We have invented nothing.
So anyway, Enkidu hears about all this, and he's just like, I will go into Uruk and I will challenge this man.
That's what
I will destroy him. And she's like, no, he's like way stronger than you. And as a matter of fact, he's already seen your coming in his dreams. And then she tells him the dreams. So he hangs back, and he ends up, this is really interesting part of the story to me. She takes him to the sheepfolds of the shepherds.
Oh, yeah.
And, this is outside the city in the cultivated lands. He'd never seen cultivated land.
Right.
But she gets him there, and they stay in the sheepfolds, and Enkidu becomes like their watchman. He's just kicking all the ass of all the wolves and everything, and protecting all their sheep, and they can sleep at night and everything, and they love him.
Yeah.
They think,
he's
and they're
the shepherd
they
king.
marvel over him and everything, like how badass he is. And
is he still hairy? Like, is he, the descriptions of him?
It doesn't say that he lost his hair.
Okay.
But it doesn't really.
It's like something of Samson in this.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So there's an interesting part in this scene where he's with the shepherds, where it's kind of showing you how he's being introduced into society. And what they do is they wash him. That's what it was. It did mention his hair, because they washed his hair and they made it all like badass, and then they put clothes on him, and then she tries to give him bread and wine, but he doesn't know how to eat or drink because all he ever did was he drank the milk from the animals. And so he's like, I don't know what to do with all this stuff. And she tells him, she's like, eat the bread. It is the stuff of life. Drink the wine. It is the custom of the people. Which is basically saying, eat this. It is life, right? And drink this and remember, because the custom is a way to remember.
And the little spoon
the bread of
goes
life.
to the left of the big knife, and the big fork goes to the right of the little fork.
Like this is communion.
Yeah.
He's coming into the community.
Yeah.
And the ceremony was him eating the bread of life and drinking the wine in remembrance of what the people do, right?
Okay.
That's the way I analyzed it. And then right after he does that, he gets all merry. He drinks like 7 bottles of wine or whatever. He's just like he just drinks a ton of it.
Yeah. This is great.
Yeah, he gets all merry, and then he goes and he anoints himself with oil. Like after that, so this is all
very symbolic. Of
and it's biblical. Like it's straight up like all these biblical traditions even into the New Testament.
The making of bread is like an alchemical ritual, the mixing of earth and water and fire and wind, and then like the wine is the same thing. But then the anointing is like one of the Watcher teachings, right? That like one of the Watchers, the fallen ones taught the anointing of oils.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the Watcher right now is pointing out that Jesus, who was the shepherd who came to protect the flock from the wolves.
Yeah.
Which is exactly, So anyway, he's there for a while, and then he gets word from a traveler that Gilgamesh is like really being an asshole in this particular way. And it has to do with a marriage that's supposed to be happening.
Oh, yeah.
And Enkidu is just finally like, no. So he rolls into Uruk, and in the middle of the night, Gilgamesh is like going up to the whatever the house is where the
wedding
bride is staying, you know, before the wedding.
Yeah.
And he's about to go in the door, and Enkidu just like puts his foot down. And they get in this massive wrestling match.
Yeah.
Right in the doorway. And they end up breaking the doorposts and just like, and then they go all through the town and just destroy all this stuff, like tearing everything apart, wrestling. And finally, Gilgamesh like catches his knee or something and throws him. And like right after that, they both are staring at each other and they're just like, dude, you're badass.
Yeah.
Dude, you are badass. And they give each other a high five and they become friends forever.
Yeah.
You're like my best friend, bro. You totally kicked my ass, dude. It's great. So the story basically jumps forward in time, and Enkidu is now, you know, he's been in the city for a while and he's living like a king, but he's totally depressed because his life has no meaning. He's not doing anything. He used to have a purpose, seemingly, like living in the forest.
Yeah.
And now he's just like, and that is what sparks the whole journey. Like Gilgamesh sees his friend like wallowing in depression, and Gilgamesh just like realizes, you know, there's a legend about my name that I am supposed to etch my accomplishments on stone. I haven't done anything. So he's
I haven't even beaten you yet.
yeah. So he's like, dude, you know, don't be depressed, man. We will go, and there's this crazy badass godlike weapon in the cedar forest named Humbaba, and we will kill him, and then we'll become heroes, and we can write the story down on stone or whatever.
Yeah.
And
so another thing, I just thought of this, and I never, Robin Hood and Little John is a similar. They have the match, right? Little John is this giant, and he was like undefeated, and Robin Hood comes out of the forest, the wild man in the forest, and beats him, and they become best friends after that.
Oh, shit, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's cool. And that was before they translated these tablets.
Yeah.
Old stories die hard, man. So yeah, they Gilgamesh wants to go kill Humbaba, and he is the guardian of the forest and the uncultivated lands, and like the way I sort of interpret it is sort of the land of the gods.
Yeah.
Like
the Cedar Forest was the land of the gods. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like you weren't supposed to go there.
Right. Well, you couldn't because Humbaba would kill you.
Right.
I mean, he just like anybody that went there, glad.
Right.
I mean, it was just you just didn't come back.
Skeletons everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
So Enkidu is just like, dude, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I have seen the guy. Because Enkidu just traveled everywhere. Before he was, quote unquote, wise, he was never a threat to Humbaba. So he had actually seen him, but he was scared to death of him.
Oh, yeah.
And it describes him as having this eye that he can fix on you and just, it's the eye of death.
Like, it destroys you, yeah.
It will destroy you, which basically I thought was a laser.
A laser. It's clearly a laser.
So anyway, Gilgamesh is like, dude, like, no, this is what we got to do, man. Like, let's do it.
Yeah.
We can totally do it together.
I have this shield and it's a mirror.
Yeah. So they get all the smiths and everything together, and they build these massive weapons. I mean, just there's huge freaking weapons. And they're carrying like each one of them's carrying like 70 score pounds or something of weapons on them, and the breastplates and just like all this armor and shit. And
so wait, what was the size of like the? You looked this up, like
the size of Gilgamesh. I skipped over that. It describes him as being 11 cubits, and I looked up cubit, and roughly it's 18 inches.
Feet.
18 inches.
Oh,
is
each
a cubit.
Okay.
So 12 cubits at 18 inches, which is still a rough estimate, is 18 feet.
Okay.
So he was about 18 feet tall.
Wow.
And
so they're matched in. This is why they can carry 7 score or whatever.
Yeah, but this was another thing I thought of. Like, they say he's 2/3 God and 1/3 man.
Yeah.
Well, if man was roughly 6 feet tall, then the 6 foot tall portion of him is his 1/3 man, and the other 12 feet is the other 2/3 God.
Gotcha. And there are the ancient images of him, and if you look at him, he's holding a lion under his arm, and you can tell when you look at the carving that it's meant to be a full-grown lion. Like, people think of it as being it's a small cat. No, it has a big mane. It's a full-grown lion, but the size of the guy, like if you think of a full-grown lion and the size of him, you're like, okay, that's an enormous person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so anyway, they get all these massive weapons built, and then they go on their journey. And there's a lot of interesting ways about the way they describe the journey, and like they basically, it's like you're playing an RPG, and there's a town, and you leave the town, and then the town's this tiny little dot, and you go, you go over the mountain, you go all this stuff in like in like a few seconds, and then you're at the next town.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what they did. They traveled a ridiculously long time that would take a normal man months and months to travel, and they did it in 2 days.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And anyway, they get there to the to the forest, and this is where Gilgamesh starts having more dreams, and he's having these prophetic dreams, but he doesn't understand them. And Enkidu is now interpreting the dreams for him. And in one of them, the sky fell, or the sky, like, or something happened with the whole mountain fell, and the sky was falling and just like raining down fire and all this crazy shit. And the mountain fell on the ground, and just basically he describes like this insane cataclysm, like Randall Carlson describing what happened at the end of the last ice age.
Wow.
In one of his dreams.
I was just listening to the evidence that they found that in 6,000 BC, so 8,000 years ago, that there was an impact, and they were saying maybe this has resulted in the whole Sodom and Gomorrah deal. But that something came in, like there was an Earth orbit object. So this is an object that's in orbit, in Earth's orbit. So when it came and hit Earth, or when it crossed Earth, when Earth was there, the angle was incredibly tiny, 6 degrees. And it actually, they have evidence of this because of this enormous avalanche that it clipped a mountain and knocked it over, basically.
Wow.
So
that's probably what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he describes that whole cataclysm, and then at the end, like the mountain is on top of him, basically, and someone showed up and like helped him out from underneath the mountain, and then gave him water and revived him, rejuvenated him, or whatever.
In the dream.
Yeah. So Enkidu translates this like based on like the mountain is the god Humbaba, or the beast, or whatever it is, and the one that picked him up is like one of their gods, or whatever, the sun god, Shemash, or whatever. Anyway, so he's like, it's a great omen, bro. We're going to kill him. And they go back and forth. Like, Enkidu gets all freaked out, right? And he's just like, we're going to die, bro. And then Gilgamesh is like, no, we will destroy him. And then Gilgamesh has a dream, and he's like, oh my God, we're going to die. We need to leave. And Enkidu is like, no, it's a great omen. Let's kill him. And they do this like 2 or 3 times. They go back and forth of like getting scared, and the other guy like lifts him up. So, and that was part of the whole story in the beginning, is that they will, you will be the axe on his side, and we will have each other's back. And so this is totally the epic of Gilgamesh and Enkidu.
Right.
Because they couldn't do it without each other.
Right.
So anyway, when they finally decide like, all right, let's go kick his ass, they go to the edge of the cedar forest. And this is basically in Lebanon,
and then we're going to tell you the rest after the break.
That's right.
I was like, we need a good place to stop right there. They're about to kick his ass. They go to the edge of the forest, and snakes.